All right, in this video, we're going to take a look at the second practice problem in the functions section. So write a program that prompts the user for a name and a whole number. The program should have a function that displays the following message. Hi, name. You entered the number where name is replaced by the name the user entered, and number is replaced by the number the user entered. After the user enters the information, the program should call the function to display the output. Here's an example of the run of the program. So enter your name, hi, enter a whole number, 34, and then the program should print the following. Hi, hey, you entered the number 34. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do, right, is to get input from the user and store that in a variable. So I'm going to create a variable called name and then use the input function to prompt the user to enter a name, and then save that in the variable name, and then get them to enter a number, and that should be a whole number. So we're going to need to change that to an int. So we're going to wrap this input inside of an int function that will do that conversion, because input always gets the input as a string, right? And so inside the input, we need the prompt, and I'll say enter a whole number. Okay. And so let's test that out. Okay, that looks like it's working just fine. And so we've got the input from the user. It says after the user enters the information, the program should call the function to display the output. So we're going to need to pass that information from the main part of the program right up to the function itself. So we'll have declare a function called print message. So use the def keyword and the name of the function, print message, followed by at least an open and closed parenthesis here. Okay, and then we're going to print the message. Now, one of the things, right, that I mentioned in the lecture video about functions is you should not use global variables here. You should not reference global variables from a function inside of a function. And so here, right, if I start putting the message f and then do hi name, you entered the number and the number here. When I run it, right, that message won't get printed. What I've got to do is to actually call this function. I haven't done that, right? Just because you have a function doesn't mean that the statements in that function are going to get executed. You need to explicitly tell Python, right, that you want to do that. So after I get the input, then I'm going to call this print message. And you can see if I do it like this, then it is going to work. But however, right, there's something that I really, really do not like here, and that is you are referencing these global variables, right, from inside of a function. And I absolutely will take off points if you don't do that. Now, there are some times where we will do that, but that's much later on down the road. If at all possible, right, if it's feasible, you should avoid doing that because it leads to really bad situations down the road. So how do I fix this situation, right? What you would do is to add some parameters here. So one for name and one for number. So now if you're new to this, it's going to seem like, hey, well, that didn't really make much of a difference, but it now made a big difference in terms of, let's see. oh, I've got a bad call right here. So here, when I called this, right, I got this error because um, now when I'm calling this print message function, right, print message has two parameters, name and number, and I haven't passed any information in my argument in here. So that's what I'm going to do. So now, if you haven't seen this before, or you might say, well, why should I do that? That just seems like extra stuff that I have to do for exactly the same behavior. But it's a little clearer if you if you call these different names. If I call this variable name 1, this variable number 1, those are different variable names. And so when I call this, um, you can see that it still works fine. So you definitely do not want to do it that first way without the parameters, because I will take off points. You should avoid having functions with code that manipulate global variables. Again, it leads to code that's more complicated to understand, maintain, and fix. So do not do that way. Do it this way here. Okay. Now it's a little clearer because now you can see these variables are different. These are not related to each other, but there's no need to do that, right? You might say here I have some local variables called name and number, but also in here I have global variables called name and number. If there is a name conflict, right? If you have some global variables and local variables inside, right, the function, when you use that variable name, like name and number here, it will always refer to the local variables. So here, right, we are not messing with name and number, those global variables as well. So if you haven't watched the video on the lecture video for functions, you should go back and watch that. Towards the end of that video, I give an example that shows, some of the situations that go on there. So again, make sure that you are passing that information to your function through these parameters here, not directly manipulating global variables from, or accessing or manipulating global variables from inside the function.